Let's jump in. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for carving out some time to jump onto today's workshop, specifically for contractors. Specifically, you all are in the greater Detroit area. And the reason that my name is Will Watrous, I'm from StructureM. The reason I got together with Hillary and Dave and Jeff and Bruce to put this workshop together is that we have faced a really uncertain environment. There's so much uncertainty. There's the elections, which is all of the craziness going on there. There's COVID. And what's interesting is that in times of uncertainty, there's also a lot of opportunity. It just has to be navigated well. You've got to recognize and seize opportunities as they present themselves. And so we decided to put together a time where we could share some wisdom, some objective perspectives on your business. This is very much about you. If you'll remember, when you registered for this, you answered a bunch of questions. And all of the content of today is actually answering your specific questions. We're going to throw your questions up on the slide and hit them one by one. And, sometimes you might know the answer to these questions already. You just need to be reminded. That's a reality. As a business owner, you know a ton. And sometimes you just need somebody saying, hey, remember this? Yeah, you need to do that now. And that's what really gets the needle moving. This is not a sales pitch. Yes, StructureM is a company. We are a growth agency. And actually, let me take a second, because we did a workshop recently. And we had some of the contractors afterwards say, hey, that was fantastic, but what do you guys do again? Who are you? So I just want to take a second. Let me throw my screen up here and just explain, who we are and what we're doing. StructureM, it's StructureM.com. We are a growth partner specifically in the contracting industry. We've worked with James Hardy for a long time in markets all over the country. If you go to StructureM.com/growth services or hit the services button, it'll walk you through at a high level what we do. We've got the growth accelerator program. It grows businesses 15 to 50% per year. But in a nutshell, we make sure you have effective messaging. We do websites, SEO, digital ads, social media, online reviews. Your reputation, as you know, is really important. Bruce is going to talk about that for a minute. Your database, CRM, marketing automation software, that big piece, reporting, coaching, and more. So we're a pretty full service solution in that we don't just address lead generation, although that's the main thing. We also look at your sales and operations, which is why we're talking today, and also the financial piece, which is Jeff's. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview. Now, again, this is not a sales pitch today. We have on the call today some fantastic gentlemen and a lady, Hillary, and let me just again show this screen and just give you a quick intro who's on the call with us. Myself, Bruce Dell is the COO of StructureM, so he oversees an entire team of marketers and specifically in the contracting space, so home improvement contractors. And so he knows soup to nuts, from strategy to all of the tactics, all the ad platforms, everything. And he's going to be speaking today. Hillary is our account executive, and she's the one that you might have first been introduced to. But Hillary is an experienced account executive. She's been working in the sales and marketing space for over 8 years, has a lot of fantastic experience. Dave Galati has a ton of experience growing and scaling home improvement companies and franchises. He's grown them up into the $30 million and sold them. He's again worked on franchise models. And I'll give you a more proper introduction in a minute, just giving you a high level view. And Jeff Prager as well. Jeff is going to kick us off here in a minute, but Jeff has been a CPA for over 40 years. He's owned literally over 100 companies. He's owned land development companies, he's owned construction companies, and he gets all the numbers stuff, and so that's really important because he knows the industry as well. So I just wanted to give you a taste of who's with us today. Hey, Sean, I just want to give you a quick shout out. Sean Dunford, thank you for hopping on the call as well. I just would like to give you an opportunity to say a couple of words if you'd like to.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, thanks to StructureM and Hillary for putting this together, and thank the rest of the panelists for joining the call as well. And then I also want to thank all the companies that I partner with that are on the line. I think it's really important this time of the year to lift up the hood and take a look at the engine and see what type of recalibration we need to do heading into the next year. That's going to make you run faster, more effective, and more efficiently. I know everyone on this call is growth-oriented company, so I think you'll get a lot of value out of the content from today.
Excellent. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And so we're going to go ahead and kick off. Now, the format is very intentionally called a workshop because we want it to be interactive. So you should have a chat in your Zoom. There's a little chat button. You can click on that. We're going to keep an eye on that. If you have questions, throw it up in the chat. We might hit it right while we're going. We might wait till the end of, let's say, Jeff's little session, answering your questions from the surveys, to address your questions in the chat, but we'll keep an eye on that. Put them in there. We're gonna monitor, manage that, and we'll answer them in real time as we go. All right, I am ready. Jeff, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and I'm gonna just give you all a little introduction to Jeff Prager. He's, as I mentioned, been a CPA for over 40 years. He understands all the confusing money stuff, the financials, the numbers. He's also, though, an author, a speaker, a lifelong entrepreneur. He's not just a paper pusher. He's been the CEO or CFO of several successful multi-million-dollar companies. He was one of the founders of Ashworth Golf Clothing. He's been the CFO and partner of a large land development company. He was the owner of Strauss Homes, which at once was rated the second largest privately owned home building company in Colorado and one of the top 100 privately owned companies in Colorado. He's owned dozens of businesses, as I meant, actually over 100 businesses. He's helped tons of business owners become more profitable over the years. So, Jeff, welcome. Thank you for being on the call today. Take it away.
It's my pleasure. Now, if I could get my slides working. So there were 4 major questions that came out of the survey, and I have roughly 15 minutes to talk. So I wanted to highlight what those questions are and give you the answers. So the first question deals with, why am I working harder and making less money? So that's the first one I'm going to address. The second one is, how come I don't have money in the bank when I need it? The third one deals with collections. How do I handle the slow collections? And the fourth one, which I'm going to address from a financial point of view, but I believe Dave may do it from a sales point of view, is losing customers because of backlog. So what's unique about this little partnership here is that we approach these problems from 3 distinctly different perspectives, but we usually come to the same conclusion. So let's deal with question 1. Why do I work harder and not make any money? So there's a couple of challenges that we all face. And as you know, I've grown some big businesses, but it wasn't always a walk in the park. In fact, there was a point where I was losing lots of sleep because I was losing lots of money in my home building company. And it took me a while to figure this out, which I'll cover in point number 2. But point number 1 is I realized I never had money in the bank. And the reality is it's one of 2 problems, but I want you to focus on this. It's either a profit problem, but usually, and more importantly, it may be a cash flow problem. And the challenge is to know how to fix it, what your next step is, what's your action plan, next 30, 60, 90 days, as well as your action plan over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Keeping both the short term and the long term in perspective. The second problem that I faced as an owner of a business is you are not a financial expert. And unless you're a geek like me, you probably don't want to be. And your financial reports are confusing, and I'm going to address this later. They don't tell you the whole story. Plus, your accountant and bookkeeper deal in the past. Now, remember this, they're not getting paid to help you improve profit and, more importantly, cash flow. And most people need a bridge between the accounting information and the next action you need to take. And the third biggest problem you might be facing is you might be in a catch-22. To grow, you need more money. And to get more money, you need to grow. Now, this creates a dilemma, and the natural way out is by working harder and doing more yourself. But when you solve the cash flow problem, and again, please know, I'm going to make a huge distinction between cash flow and profit. When you solve the cash flow problem, it's easy to solve all your other problems because you could hire experts. If you have the cash, you could get the people to help you. But there's a reason your windshield is bigger than your rear view mirror, because where you're headed is more important than what you left behind. Let me clarify that, okay? A good CFO is going to help you look through your windshield. Pretend you're driving your car. In the back seat are your accountant and CPA and your bookkeeper, and they're telling you where you've been. But a good CFO is sitting next to you saying, I see where we're going, and here's how we're going to get there. And that's what a good CFO will do for you. Now, here's the other reality. There are 8 key drivers in a business, in every business. Some are more important than others, depending on your business. But the first 5 deal with generating revenue, the number of leads. Are you getting the quality leads you need so that your salespeople can convert them into paying customers? So the second one is your conversion rate. Your third one is your customer retention rate. Now, I've been in the construction business for many, many years. It's what I specialized in as a CPA. But the customer retention rate, you're going to go, hey, I sell a deck, I sell siding, I'm done. And you go, that's it. But like when we had our home building company, we started looking at the bigger picture. And we found that there was a certain demographic that we would go to them at the end of 3 years, and we'd say, with a bouquet of flowers, a box of candy, maybe a basket, a fruit basket, whatever. And we go, hey, we know you've been living in a Strauss community for 3 years. And by the way, we want to thank you. And here's a little gift. But by the way, when you bought this house, you were doing this, your spouse was doing that, and you had this many children. Did anything change? Or do you know anybody you'd like to have as your neighbor? And they go through it, and believe it or not, we'd be able to sell an extra 3 to 5 homes a year based on that box of candy. Now, the realtors cost us about 15 grand in commission. 3 to 5 times 15 grand. Would that buy a nice dinner? And so we took a different perspective on that. And then the fourth is your number of transactions per customer. For most of us, it may be 1. But if you're doing maintenance packages or something of that nature, you could get that average number up. And the average price per transaction. How much are you charging? Are you charging the right price? Are you getting the right margin to cover not only your cost, but your growth as well, and your salary? Are you looking at the bigger picture? Then you look at gross profit, which comes down to your materials, your supplies, your contractors. Are you using the right mix? Is there any way to make that more efficient? Drive your costs down. Use less inputs to get the same output. How do we make that better? Then we go into net profit. Net profit is gross profit minus payroll, marketing expense, and your other overhead. And it's usually called fixed costs because the obligation is fixed from month to month. But here's the big difference. Are you driving cash flow? Which is, are you able to fund your receivables, your inventory? Are you able to get your debt payments covered? Are you able to buy more equipment? And most importantly, are you able to take more out of your business without hurting it? That's the key, without hurting it. So the second question is, how do I get the cash when I need it? So there are a couple of ways to raise money. One is internally through your operations. And over the long term, that has got to be your primary method of raising money. Now, let's go through internally. And the other way is raising money externally, borrowing it, getting investors. There's a gazillion different ways to do it. But let's talk about internally. Now, what I learned when I ran my business is that accounting, if I ran my business according to my accounting, my financial management, I would go out of business. Let me repeat that. My financial statements, if I ran my business based on those, I would have gone out of business. And it took me a while to realize that as an owner, we think in terms of cash in and cash out. So cash comes in from selling your products, getting debt, or getting equity. Either you put it in or your investors do. Basically, these three methods are the only way to get cash into your business. And I want you to use common sense. Don't think like an accountant. That will kill you. Then, where's it going? It's going for your cost of goods sold, your salaries, your subcontractors, your material, your supplies, whatever it is, your overhead, and salaries. Those are the biggest drivers of money going out. Plus, you may be buying assets, paying debt, or paying dividends. Until cash comes in faster than it's going out, there's no money for you. And that may be why you're working harder. Now, here's the irony. See that dotted line? Some of your cash coming in and cash going out is on the income statement. And some of your cash coming in and going out is on your balance sheet. Now, it's a major accomplishment to get a lot of small business owners looking at their income statement. And they look at it and they go, well, if I made this much profit, which shows up here, how come my cash, which shows up here, is negative? And there's a huge disconnect between the cash coming in and going out and profit and loss and balance sheet. And even in larger corporations I've worked with, they're not looking at the balance sheet. Now, I want to drive this home. Suppose you made 30 grand in profit. Now, you got to pay cash. Most small businesses are either a partnership, a sole proprietorship, or an S corp. Taxes don't even show up on your financial statement. Misleading point number one. So of your 30 grand, you only have 18,000, you think, in cash. Now let's talk about uncollected receivables. These are potential receipts that are tied up on your balance sheet. So suppose you have $41,000 in receivables, new receivables. Your net is 23,000 negative cash flow. You made 30, but your bank account is $23,000 less than it was last year. And we're still not done. Suppose you're making debt payments. Now you're approximately $33,000 in the hole. And no one's telling you, no one's telling you about what's going on your balance sheet. And that's why your profit of 30 is really negative cash flow. And literally, the more you try to increase your profit by working harder, the bigger your hole may become, because you've got to fund receivables, inventory, and subcontractors. So the more you grow, the more money you could be losing and never get to the point where you collect it faster than it's going out. And that leads to a lot of financial problems. Cash flow, your coins are different than profit. That's what I want you to get out of this. Now I want to talk about external ways to raise money. Most of you want to go to your banker, and there's a couple of problems that you may encounter because your banker sees you based on your financial statements. They want to look at your financial records, your reputation, but more importantly, they want to have low risk when they lend to you, not high risk, low risk. They want to know that you have sustainable profits and sustainable cash flow, and that lending to you is a productive use of their capital. In other words, what's in it for them? And they're going to analyze you based on 5 things. Okay? Your character, your commitment, your management experience, your integrity, your capacity. Do you have cash flow, which we just covered, to service the debt? So you may have profit, but they're going to look at your cash flow. Do you have capacity or capital, net worth? What they're looking for is everything goes bad. What is the project you're working on, your company, or you personally have to ensure that they have enough collateral to pay back your loan? And then they're going to look at the economic conditions, the political environment, the consumer environment, and the technological environment you're operating in. So that's what they're looking at. But here's the key to raising money, because I get this about a lot of companies. They're afraid they can't get a line of credit. The finance companies are clunky, they're outdated, and they won't lend to newer companies. The time to ask for money is when you don't need it. You try to borrow money, give them a nice financial picture. You do a cash flow projection and say, look, during this period, I'm going to have cash stress, but here's how we make it up. Take them into the future of your business so that they're willing to lend you money. So I hope that's clear, but the time to ask for money is when you don't need it. And line it up when you don't need it. Now, some of you are already at the point where you need it. Now you've already gotten yourself behind the 8 ball. But there are ways to do it, but it's very expensive. If you do it proactively, borrowing money is cheap. If you do it as a reaction, reactively, money is very expensive. Okay? There's a lot more I could talk about when it comes to raising money. Okay? But let's go there for now. The third problem is collections, okay? And the idea here is that it's a lot easier to collect money when your clients are waiting for your services, and a lot more difficult to get the check once you've completed the project. Okay, easier to get money proactively than it is retroactively. Again, common sense, does this make sense? So our key here is to get your money up front. Now, here's what I propose. Not all of this is possible, but here's what I propose to lower your collections, with the last couple of bullets being the most important. So a lot of contractors don't stay ahead of their costs. They spend the money, then collect it. Try and get as much money up front as possible for more materials, more supplies. Try to stay in front of your cost instead of behind it. Get progress payments at the start of a phase instead of a completion of a phase. This may or may not be able to be done, but if not, then break your progress payments into smaller phases so that your exposure is minimum. Collect on change orders at the time you sign them. Don't make it part of the ongoing thing. Collect it immediately. And don't forget that the cost of doing an estimate for a project is less than the cost of the change order and coordinating that change order, because you're changing what's already moving. So your margin on a change order should be much, much, much higher than the margin on the job alone to compensate you for that additional accounting and administrative expenses involved in it. Now, here's the biggest one that I found helps. Break that final draw into 2 progress payments. One is upon substantial completion. Okay, get it so that all your costs are covered and a little bit of your profit. So they can't hold you hostage for completion or little things or the would you. Hey, if you want me to pay you, you've got to do this, even though it's beyond the scope of what you agreed to. You've got to get in front of your customer. Most of them are honest and good, but I know I encountered it where people are going to take advantage of you. The last thing and most important is get the job done. Close it out so it's completed, so there are no more excuses. The longer you take to close out a job, the harder it is for you to collect the money. And let me go one step further. You should have a very strong agreement with your subcontractors to make sure they're on the same wavelength as you. We do not want jobs open. We did something unusual as a home builder. We had the walkthrough 3 days before the closing. And our job was to have 100% done before we closed. Because once they move in, the movers start breaking drywall, breaking corners, doing stuff, chipping. Everything happens on the move-in, and then it becomes your responsibility. How does that apply to what you're doing? I want to answer one last question, and that's large backlog. How many of you are experiencing a large backlog, which is a good thing, you would think? But then customers drop and you've done work for nothing. The estimate, the scheduling, everything is for nothing. So let me give you an accounting perspective, if you will. Suppose you have a 20% gross margin. Your fixed costs are 120 grand. You don't need to know the math. That's my job. That's what we help you with. But your break even is 600,000 based on a 20% gross margin. Now, in reality, the bigger your backlog, the more demand there is for your service. So why not increase your gross profit to 30% or 25%? So in my case, the break even went from 600 grand to 400 by increasing my profit margin. So I'm doing roughly 30% less work for the same amount of money. So instead of working harder to keep these clients, okay, go here. Go to increasing your profit. I want to leave you with one thought. Accountants break even will get you in trouble. The way they calculate break even is based on fixed and variable cost, but not the money to fund your receivables, your inventory, your prepayments, your debt, your equipment purchases, and your owner's draw. So the way an accountant normally calculates where you need to be for the year is 100% wrong. Okay? I can't emphasize that enough. You need to control your margins. You need to control break even based on cash flow, not on profit, for the very reasons we talked about earlier. So I'm going to conclude with, your business is hungry. It needs money to keep operating. So you have one job, and that is to make more money. That's it. That will solve your problems. You all know it. If you ask people why they went broke, they said, if I had more money, I could have made it. Now, that money is symptomatic of other problems, structural problems in your organization. But if you're not making money, you have structural problems. Now, our goal is to help you do one thing: make more money, period. So I'm going to open it up for questions. And here's what I am going to say. In the email that Will's going to send you after this, we're going to give you a free copy of our book, Make More Money. And it's the business owner's 5-step plan for bringing home more cash. And if you'd like to talk to me, just contact me here. This is not a plug. This is voluntary. If you want more information, this is not a sales call. I promise you, if you call me, we will not sell you on this call. So I can't see the chat box, Will, and I'm going to turn off my screen in a second. But are there any questions going on my little piece?
Thank you, Jeff. Yep, I'm keeping an eye on the chat. You must be doing a fantastic job because I don't see any questions yet. If you have questions about cash flow, Jeff, this is a pretty fantastic opportunity to ask it of Jeff, who's got loads of experience, technical and practical. So throw it in the chat there. Any questions in regard to cash flow, money management, finances? Not seeing anything yet. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jeff. Super helpful. Oh, here we go. Christian, I know you recommended that internal cash flow is best. When do you recommend external cash flow?
If you have a growth projection and you know you've got to grow, there are costs of growth. You may have to hire more people, front end more money for your product and or your vendors or material, and or fund more administration. So if you have a defined plan where you can answer a banker's questions, how much do you need? When do you need it? How do I get paid back? If you can answer those questions, then funding is the right thing to do. Okay? So you've got to be, here's everything I believe about financial management. It's not about the rear view mirror. It's where are you going? How are you going to get there? Do you have a plan? If you could convey that, you could convey everything and borrow money. I remember when we started our home building business, we were trying to get loans. We had no history. And I went into my banker with a loose leaf notebook. In the first tab was a summary of our business. The second tab was my financial projection. The third tab was my financial history. The fourth were just blueprints, of our plans. And the fifth was just other miscellaneous crap. But it passed the weight test. It was a 2-inch binder. So the president of the bank, the owner actually, walks in, thumbs through my loose leaf, and says, give him all the money he wants. And that was our start. And I'm being literal about this. Bankers are impressed by perception. If you have your ducks in order, borrowing money is easy. But if you don't, you're in trouble. I hope that answered the question.
That's super. Yep. Good. Love it. Well, we're going to move on to Dave. If you have other questions, throw them in the chat. Thank you, Jeff. That's fantastic. Thank you for the offer as well. The book is wonderful. I want to introduce David Galati. David has been in the home improvement industry for over 2 decades. He has extensive C-suite experience and a lot of different organizational functions, including marketing, sales, operations. He led a $30 million home improvement business, scaled it 350% over 4 years. Is a leader of leaders. He has helped hundreds of home improvement companies literally scale their companies. He has a proprietary coach to scale program where he hits a lot of the sales and operationals and leadership. There's a lot of head trash that owners have to work through in order to be able to scale up effectively. And so he's got a ton of experience with that. So Dave, welcome. I'm going to actually share my screen and I'll walk you through the slides.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. And I appreciate everybody being on board. We have a really robust group here. And so Sean, thank you and Hillary for setting this up. Really appreciate it. Well, we wanted to kind of address some of the questions you have, and this will be fairly straightforward and simple. And these are some of the things that I work with my clients to kind of help them overcome. And so there's nothing I haven't seen in home improvement in all aspects. I've worked in multiple industries, multiple verticals. And so there's a lot of common threads here. And my approach is to what I call keep it simple, stupid. And so I think sometimes it's really easy to overcomplicate things. And so I try to break it down into things that we can bite in, chew, and move the needle on. And I think that's the most important thing. In home improvement, sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but at the end of the day, we're still moving 1 step forward, and that's important. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about sales and some of the questions we got on the survey, and there was a bunch of great questions. We try to isolate a few of them that I think are important pieces that a lot of home improvement contractors struggle with on the sales side. And one question is, how can I get my sales staff to follow up more, right? So, I think when you just set the stage and you look at kind of the history of home improvement sales, right? The old 1 call close, call the manager up at the kitchen table. And, that has evolved obviously over the years. And most of the folks that we work with, follow a more consultative sales style and process. And it's more rapport building and asking questions and getting to pain points, more professional. But one of the things that happens is when you have salespeople that run leads, and especially if they run a level of leads that is high, if you've got, a lot of times what it is this is a mistake that I think a lot of home improvement contractors make, is they, instead of hiring more salespeople, they try to get more leads out of the existing salespeople. And so what that does is it does a few things. So I will answer, part of this is answering this question, but some of it is additional things. One is they end up burning leads, and they have a point of diminishing return where the close rate and the average sale goes down, and what we call an ADL, average dollar per lead, begins to go down because they're running too many leads. But the other piece is they don't have enough time to actually follow up on the unsold proposals that they do create. And so the first and foremost thing is, and this is probably going to shock a lot of you to hear this, but this has been my experience in dealing with hundreds of home improvement salespeople across multiple industry verticals. The actual sweet spot of leads per salesperson per week, hold your hat, is between 10 and 15. It's 2 to 3 a day at the most. And some of that is closer to 2, depending on the nature of your sales process. What I've discovered historically is the amount of closing percentage. First of all, closing percentage at the table in the home increases significantly if the salesperson spends 3 or more hours with the customer during a sit. Now, some of you may be going, that's crazy. My guys are in and out of there in an hour. Well, I'm telling you, it's not crazy. The reason why is they're spending the time that's needed to properly build rapport with the client. People buy from people they like and trust. They're presenting your product in a way that differentiates it from the competitors, and they're building value. And if they actually get the client, the prospects to want to spend that much time with them, then their chances go up. And so what I'm getting at is the first step to having them follow up more is not giving them too many leads. And so if you've got a scenario where you've got 2 salespeople and they're running 50 to 60 leads a week, you need to hire another and maybe 2 more salespeople. Now, you may upset the apple cart there, and that's going to be a cultural shift. But if you can show, and it's very easy to do so, that a salesperson can actually make more money running less leads if they improve their closing percentage and average sale because they're not burning leads, then you'll understand that that's what that's all about. And so the first and foremost, make sure they have bandwidth to follow up with those leads. The other thing that works is what I've done in multiple businesses is have a scenario where if the salesperson doesn't follow up or they have a certain time period to follow up, it then goes to what we call in the office kind of the outbound sales closer. And so this is something that would be in an appointment center, could be another salesperson, where what they're going to do is they're going to go out and they're going to try to follow up on these unsold proposals, and their objective is to close the business. And so generally speaking, that's generally anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 days, where the salesperson kind of owns that follow-up process. And if they don't close the sale by that, it then goes to that internal person that's following up. And generally what happens is in a commission scenario, assuming a 10% commission on average, depending on the time and the size and the scope, that person ends up splitting the commission with the initial salesperson. So what it's doing is it's incentivizing the salesperson to follow up, because if they don't, they lose the opportunity to close the lead. And so that does 2 things. One, it creates a higher degree of follow-up, but then it also improves the actual closing percentage, because the ones that would normally follow between the cracks, now the company, from a company perspective, you're able to call up and secure those jobs. A lot of times it might be the salesperson needs to go back out there. Maybe it's right sizing the job. Whatever that might be, if you have a structure, processes in place around the follow-up process, then you can generate success. All right. So hopefully those are 2 or 3 things that will be helpful. Make sure they're not running too many leads. Incentivize them to follow up by de-incentivizing them. And from there we go, we set up CRM. I don't know what that's all about. Somebody was writing CRM in the chat box. Using a CRM.
I think just a customer relationship management software system, like a HubSpot, just to automate.
Yeah, sure. So, but that's not the sales staff. That's something that can be done on the back end through your CRM, right? So when they disposition the job, right? If you've got a platform that can then send follow-up emails and automation, that's fine. But that's going to require them to enter the input right and do that right. Here's the thing. I'm all for drip campaigns and follow-up and email, but nothing replaces the phone call, all right? The actual get in front. So when we're talking about sales staff, we want the sales staff to follow up. These are the things that the sales staff needs to do. This is contacting Mr. Jones or Mrs. Smith and making sure that there's a follow-up. So part of what I've seen is it's very easy for the automate, and it's important. I'm not saying we don't do it. We do it. That's part of our methodology here. But we can't let that be a crutch for the salespeople not to follow up. Oh, the email campaigns will do it. Let me tell you right now, there's no magic email. There's no silver bullet. There's no LinkedIn InMail that will replace the direct communication from a prospect from a salesperson to a prospect. All right. All right. So we talked a little bit about backlog. Jeff mentioned that more from a kind of a finance perspective and what that looks like. Obviously, large backlogs create a lot of financial stress from a cash flow perspective. But from a sales perspective, there's a couple of things that managing a backlog will do as far as how do you manage it from a sales perspective, meaning the backlog is the backlog, right? The salespeople don't affect the backlog, but the salespeople have to sell through the backlog. And we all know there comes a time where if your backlog is too long, perceived by the prospect, it affects your ability to close, because people don't like to wait 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 weeks, whatever it might be, to get their job installed. And so you're asking for a deposit or commitment. If it's too far out, it creates sales resistance, right? So there's a couple of things, and we're experiencing this with a couple of industries right now with some of our clients. One is the window and door industry, okay? Window and doors, unlike single kind of product manufacturing, roofing, siding, and I know Hardy's done an amazing job of staying on top of their manufacturing. Window fabrication involves 8 to 10 components that come from different raw materials and sourcing it, and it's hard. And it's not like you can leave out a piece of the process in the manufacturing. And so we're seeing window manufacturers, they're out 5 to 6 months, and they're doing the best they can. And combine that with COVID restrictions in some of these states, it's creating a huge issue. And so one of the things that we just recently implemented with one of our window and door clients, and this is just a window and door client, this isn't an exterior client where they have multiple product lines. This is straight, all they do is sell window and doors, is incentivize the customer at the closing table when you're going to ask for the order. And what it is it's basically a backlog delay discount that you're building in. So what you're doing is you're doing a couple of things. It's specific to the industry, meaning in windows and doors, everybody's experiencing a backlog. And so we have to understand that this is universal. It's not like Mrs. Smith's going to call another window company and they're going to be able to install a job in 3 weeks when the other company's at 16 weeks. So it's a universal. But what it's doing is it's acknowledging these things up front. COVID, manufacturing delays, all of these things. And customers that decide to move forward, understanding these things and being flexible, so setting that expectation, will receive a 5% or a 7% or a 10% discount. We're not talking about huge discounts, but significant enough to allow the customer to understand that in exchange for waiting, by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, it's not our fault. This is just the reality. We need to be transparent with you, so it builds trust and credibility. We will give you a discount in good faith as a result of that. And it's really a written sheet that's almost like a preferred customer discount, same day discount, some of these things you might already be using. And what we're finding is that lowers the sales resistance. It feels like the customer is getting something and they're able to kind of sell through that. Now, the flip side is you don't do that. The customer waits 14, 16 weeks, they get antsy, like, where are my windows? And then they start creating a problem. And if you've got a good reputation, those things can hurt your reputation, irrespective of if they're your fault or not. So this is being a proactive, it's communicating with transparency. And you can do this really with any industry where you're experiencing a backlog. So in the basement waterproofing business, which I spent a lot of time in, you have huge biblical rains roll in, and everybody's basement's flooded. Everybody needs waterproofing services. That backlog can go out. Well, same kind of thing approaches. Due to the incredible floods that we had, this is why we have the backlog, and we're willing to acknowledge that and incentivize you to stay with us. If there's scenarios where any product where you have backlogs, you can offer the incentive for whatever reason. Maybe it's you're short-staffed, right? So a lot of times, hey, it's not that we can't install the work, we don't have installers to do that. Well, you don't have to tell people that you don't have installers to do that, but you can say, hey, we're experiencing backlogs and we're working through that, but we want to incentivize you and understand. So whatever the situation is, you create something that gives your salespeople a little bit of ammunition, acknowledges the backlog, and then incentivize your clients to move forward. I found this universally to be the best process, okay? So that's how you manage it from a sales perspective. There's a whole production thing, and we won't get into that now, around how you make sure you're managing your backlog that way, and then obviously from financial. All right, so that's 2. 3 is, how can I win more projects and close more deals? Well, this is a bit of a loaded question, okay? And so for me, there's a lot of envelopes that I'd want to follow up with to make sure everybody understood what this is. But the problem is, if you're not winning more projects and closing more deals, you have a sales problem. And so there's a few things that could be occurring that could creating these problems. One, do you have quality trained salespeople, right? That would be a question that I would ask. Tell me about your sales team, all right? How are they running? Do you have a sales system in place? Is there accountability around how they're running the leads? Okay, do you understand the key KPIs? Okay, key KPI, the number one KPI in sales is called ADL. There's multiple ways to define it by name, but it's a combination of 2 things. Your closing percentage times your average sale. That's your ADL. So if I close at 50% and my average sale is $2,000, okay, then 50% times 2,000 is $1,000. That's an ADL, average dollar per lead. For every lead I run as a salesperson, I generate $1,000 in revenue. Historically, that's a poor number in home improvement. Generally speaking, you start to get real good returns and rewards at 2,500 or north. Some companies run 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 ADLs. The more your ADL, meaning the more money you generate per lead, the actual more money you can spend on marketing. So it's tied together. So to win more projects and close more deals, it starts with the people you have selling. It starts with your sales process. It starts with measuring your KPIs from a sales perspective. and then understanding where you're weak and why you're not losing, why you're not winning the more projects. If your closing rates are low, 20, 30%, you've got a closing problem. If you can't sell larger deals, if everybody else is selling $8,000 or $10,000 deals in your industry and you're selling 3,500, then you have an issue with presentation. Are you building value in the sales process, right? If you can't, if you're running too many leads, as we talked earlier, and you're just burning through them, you're not giving people the perspective, the time that they need, the investment they need, you'll have that issue. If you're prejudging, salespeople love to prejudge leads. Oh, it's in the bad part of town. Oh, they can't afford it. Mrs. Jones, you don't want this, right? See, on to the next one, right? On the other side of town where there's money. All of that stuff affects the ability to close projects, win more projects and close deals. That make sense?
It's really good, Dave. I'm just looking at you're halfway through here.
I got 9 minutes. I got to roll here. So, all right, last piece is production staff. So how do I hire quality laborers and installers? So this is a controversial thing. And I know that not everybody is going to agree with me, but this has been my history and my background, okay? You need to invest in laborers and installers and treat them like valuable assets, not a commodity. It's very easy to say, I'm going to hire a bunch of subcontractors. They're going to do whatever they need to do to take care of it. I'm going to pay them a percentage of the job and I'm going to be done with it. And that's the attitude that a lot of people take. Now, I understand some industries, workman's comp, like on roofing, man, it's crazy. It's prohibitive. I get that. But my general rule of thumb is the more you can invest in hiring W-2 employees that are accountable to you as employees, train them up like valuable people in your organization, and build a team of quality professionals, incentivize them with an hourly plus a bonus program, then those are the things that you want to do. In the basement waterproofing industry, we converted hourly workers into bonusable employees and saw the average foreman of a basement waterproofing crew make $45,000 to $60,000 a year to having basement waterproofing crew foreman, hold your hat here, make $150,000 a year. We took an average weekly installation number from about 12 to 14,000 a week, and we got that to some cases $35,000 to $40,000 a week in installs per crew. And what we did is we incentivized them to do two things: work harder and smarter, right? The more they put in the ground, the more we make, the more they make, okay? So you had production foremen making as much as salespeople, all right? And so there's all sorts of ways to structure these bonus programs, but it's basically an incentive where if once they hit a certain percentage of revenue, as far as your labor costs, as they beat that number, then they get that, and they get it completely. So if you set a labor cost of 15, 16, 18, whatever your industry is, whatever that nice number is, where you're going to be profitable at that labor cost, and you pay them a lower hourly rate, but if they hit that number, anything, and so if they do it at 12%, well, they get 4%. And the foreman gets it, and then he can share a little bit of it with his helpers, and that's how you build and scale. And let me tell you, we had employees, foremen, that were there 15, 20, there's 30, 40-year foremen in the Basement Systems Network, Contractor Nation Basement Systems Network, that why would you go anywhere else? You're going to stay for life because you're being taken care of. 401ks, benefits, all of that. So that's number one, as far as how to hire quality installers and labor. And how can you recruit good labor? Well, it's the same thing that comes onto that. If everybody else is hiring, under the table or 1099 or, bare bones, no benefits, then you've got to provide a layer of like, this is a professional job. This is different from anything else. Now, look, in the short term, this will cost you something. I want to be very clear. This is an investment you're making in your business. You won't start seeing a return on that investment until you get the fruit of that labor. And so that's the number one reason why home improvement contractors don't want to do this, is because they don't want to make that initial upfront investment. It's also going to require you to actually follow a formal interview process. Okay. I use a program called the Hire. It's a phenomenal interviewing process that treats people like professionals. It's not, fog a mirror, show up, can you pass the background check? Good, you're good to go. This is you want people that see a career, and it takes time to reset that. But it starts with you as the owner understanding the value of a laborer, and not as a transactional thing, but as someone that's going to be a valuable part of your team. All right. So recruiting starts with you. It starts with how you look and see that labor versus a commodity, a transaction. And if you believe that it's just a transactional thing and there's no way to differentiate, you'll never be that way. If you believe that there is, then you can go out and do that. Okay. But it takes time. There's no quick fix here. The last thing ties to the first thing. Yeah.
Dave, before you sign off, we got a question. I want to make sure you can get to it. What type of ways do you structure the hourly and bonus program?
Yeah, so that's what I alluded to earlier. So part of that is you set up a base hourly raise that will probably be lower than what it normally would be if you're paying them a premium. But then what I was saying is you set up a percentage of the profit. So there's a percentage of labor that you set as the number. If they beat that labor percentage, whatever that number is, they get that. That's the bonus structure. Okay. And it's going to vary depending on your industry. If you have higher material costs, low labor costs, then that's different. If you have higher labor costs, lower material costs, it's based on industry. But that's the formula. And then you show them a path forward that they can actually earn this. And then you train them to be efficient, right? You don't sit around for an hour at the shop and milk the clock before or after. You don't run to Home Depot 3 times to get materials. You load your truck and you make sure your inventory is right. All of these things where you can look and say, hey, you can shave 10 hours off of your week. We worked with the same window and door company that had 23% labor cost. We got them down to 12%. Why? Because they were burning 8 to 10 hours a week per crew times 3 guys. Okay, we got that down instantly. Now all of a sudden, we can make money and they can make more money. Their foreman went from 45 to 50 to 75,000, and the company's more profitable. So it's all about understanding that. I've got 2 minutes. I need to get to this last one. So getting back to all of what I just said, how do I prevent jobs from taking longer than they should? Incentivizing your people for a bonus. So if I know I'm a foreman and I get incentivized to do quality work and do it fast, because then I can move on to the next job and make another bonus. It's not about just making as much as I can hourly. This is about, I want to make a piece of this project and be an entrepreneur, even though I've got the protection. So even if the job goes sideways and it's not my fault, I know I'm guaranteed my hourly. It's not like I'm going home with nothing. But if I'm incentivized to work smarter and harder, then I will take as short of a time as possible to finish the job. Now, look, if there's factors that involve, hey, we're short on supplies, or there's we don't have nothing down at the warehouse or anything like that, that's different. What I'm talking about is from a labor standpoint. If you incentivize people to do the right thing at the right time and do it in a fast way, they will no longer take jobs. We had jobs that were 2 or 3 days that were getting done in a day. Why? Because there's no waste. And the foreman want to get on to the next job. And then also, hey, by the way, that helps your backlog issue too, because you install more jobs quicker, you have less backlog. All right, 2 minutes. I've got to bounce at the end of the hour. Hopefully this is helpful.
Awesome, Dave. I know you got to bounce in 2 minutes. Dave, Dylan was just clarifying whether or not you incentivize just the foreman and allowed him to decide.
That's correct. That's correct. But so now here's the thing. Again, you're making the foreman make decisions what's best for his crew, right? So the foreman gets incentivized. The foreman incentivizes the helpers how much he wants to give. It's still coming out of his piece. It's not he's giving them cash. He's going to say, well, I want to give them 10% or I want to give them 15%. The other thing that this does is it makes helpers want to be foremen. So it builds your bench, because the helpers see what the foreman's making, and they know as you grow and scale that you want to train from within. So you're going to get helpers that are going to say, I'm going to pay my dues, almost like an apprentice, and then I'm going to be able to run my own crew. And when I do, I know, and then I'm going to treat them like I want to be treated now. So it creates a culture in your organization that's very strong.
It's fantastic. Thank you, Dave. I know you got to run. Thank you, Dylan. Good questions. Appreciate
you guys. And thank you for having me. And good luck to everybody and happy holidays.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave. All right. So last up here, hey, if you have more questions, throw them in the chat. I hope you're appreciating how valuable this information is. Just so good to hear from people who've been there, done it, have the t-shirt, bought the video, and they're going to walk you through the same process. I want to introduce for a minute Bruce Dell. Bruce is our COO here at StructureM. He's been managing and consulting contractors on their marketing for over 8 years. As I mentioned earlier, he oversees a team of marketers from digital advertising to SEO to web development to social media, email marketing. We have all the people in-house who do that, and Bruce oversees them. He's been brought in by James Hardy back when we could go in person to headquarters up in Chicago to train a lot of the Hardy reps on best practices in marketing, help their contractors grow faster. And so Bruce is going to talk specifically to some of the marketing questions that you had filled out on the survey question when you registered. Bruce, thank you. Go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Will. Let me share my screen. All right. Well, hello, everybody. It's good to be here. I'm excited to be able to share some of the marketing wisdom and insights that we've learned over the last 9 years of serving home improvement contractors, and in fact, James Hardy contractors. I think our second client 9 years ago was a James Hardy contractor, and that's actually how we really got started in this niche with this company. And so we have learned a lot over these last 9 years and seen a lot, and looking forward to sharing some of that with you. Thank you so much for filling out the survey when you registered for this event. We've got a lot of really good questions, and overwhelmingly most people were interested about lead generation. That was their biggest marketing challenge, was some kind of lead generation, whether it be how to get more leads or how to get better leads or that kind of thing. And so we're going to focus initially on that, and we're going to answer a lot of other questions as well. And then any questions that we don't get to, we can save for the end, and I'll have my email address at the end as well. I'd love to engage further if there's something that doesn't get addressed. I definitely want to be a resource to you and be able to answer those questions in what you're looking for. So, but before we jump in, I wanted to share with you a fantastic guide that we put together. This was about last year, or maybe a year or two ago, and we revised it last year, and it's the Contractor Revenue Accelerator. This is a labor of love, and again, a guide that we had put together of all of our best practices. And before you jump into tactics, before we start talking about do this and do that, and we'll get to that, it's really important to have a sound strategy for your marketing. You need a strategic approach to building a consistent, lasting marketing machine. And so this guide really goes into the strategy around building a proven marketing system. And the guide goes into developing a message that really resonates with your ideal clients, creating a website and content that generate leads time after time, search engine optimization, how to win on Google, building online reviews, a number of different things. And so we are going to share this the link to this accelerator at the end. I'll put it in the chat, and so you can go ahead and download that, and I really recommend it. Again, it focuses on the strategy, what and why you should be doing things, and then when it comes to the tactics, those pieces all fall into place. And the last thing I want to say regarding that is it's important to hire a marketing company or a marketer, in-house marketing person that can really oversee all of these areas, all your areas of marketing. A lot of times what we see with contractors is they'll have a person who does PPC, and then they'll have a SEO person, and I've got a web guy, and then that person does social media. And they're all fragmented, they're all over the place and not really talking to each other. And so you get this disjointed message. And it's hard to be responsible for the outcome if I only have a small piece of the puzzle. Why is PPC not performing? It's got a website problem. Or why is it? Oh, it's a strategy problem, and it's somebody else's deal. And so having somebody who really owns and oversees all of these areas is critical. And so that's my recommendation, whether it be, as I said, in-house or a marketing agency. But in the short time we've got, I want to jump into some tactics to generate more leads, and that was definitely the biggest question that we got: how to generate more leads. And the biggest area that we have identified to generate lots of short-term leads is through paid advertising. And there is no shortage of paid advertising lead gen sites out there. Here's just a sample of them. There's probably 30 more that I could have added to this slide. And we find is most contractors have this love-hate relationship, right, with these kind of companies. It is, we know they need to use them, but it's they don't want to. And what we found again is the most successful contractors, the contractors who are growing and have aggressive growth goals, they understand that they need to take part in this, and they are strategic in which ones they use, who they use, but they're active and they're on them, and they're not dependent on them. They get leads from a number of different sources, but they recognize that they need to pay to play, and not all of these sites are equal. Some of them are definitely more important than others, and you get to know that in your market, in your area. A lot of times we found some contractors love Yelp and Yelp advertising and see great results. I have another contractor, that's a cuss word. Do not say that word to him. He gets, because he's had bad experiences and different things. So not all created equal. One of the things we recommend is do a search, see which of these lead gen sites are coming up high in your area or well known in your area, and try those first. And then measure is so important. You cannot engage in any of these lead gen sites if you don't have an effective method to measure the performance exactly. The amount of money I'm putting in, what am I getting out, and to see if it's worthwhile carrying on. But the main reasons why we always recommend to do paid is you can get some relatively quick results. SEO, content, those kind of things are great, but fantastic longer term. They take time to get going. They also, you've got some good control about how much to put in, when to pause. You can track these really well, which is always a good thing. And then for a big part of these, unfortunately, it's no longer really an option. And what I'm talking about is Google paid. And we'll talk about that now. Google is really reducing your choice to participate here. In fact, this is just a statistic that's a little bit outdated, but 41% of Google clicks go to the top paid results on search. And so you can see this is just an example of a typical search result. And you've done this thousands of times where you've slowly and surely seen this happening more and more and more. Google is in the paid digital space. That's where they make 97% of their revenues from advertising. And so slowly but surely, they are continuing to push those free listings down instead of paid. And so this is really not becoming an option anymore, where a lot of contractors used to be a choice. Or if you really wanted to do paid, if you want to be found on Google, you're going to have to pay. And in addition, actually, a new thing that's started a few years ago is Google local service ads or Google guarantee ads are now being laid on top of this as well. So this is a little bit outdated. If you do a local search for siding contractor, siding installation, now above paid, you get another paid option that has this 3 card, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And so what's happening is, again, just further down the page, you have to scroll. And in fact, you have to scroll to even find any kind of paid, free, I should say listing. So paid, Google paid is definitely what we recommend. And the question then is, how do you make sure that paid ads on Google is working for you? So I want to talk a little bit about that now. We always recommend Google ads and Facebook retargeting ads. Those are the fundamentals that we think is important to generate some good leads. And so again, the nice thing is you're able to have a lot of control and really have a dialed in budget, as well as be able to track paid ads and Google paid. The other thing is website retargeting is another thing we strongly recommend for contractors. If you think about it, you have paid, you have done all the hard work getting that visitor to your site to see your website. And then when they leave or shop around, you're not following them around with a billboard. So website retargeting is really table stakes. when it comes to what you should be doing, if anything. Google ad retargeting, Facebook ad retargeting keeps the visitor top of mind as they're shopping around, as they're going through the decision process about what to do. Follow them around with Google ads. But the main thing with Google ads is to not just set it and forget it. Don't just put something up there and, hey, let it run. We have seen far too many contractors waste thousands of dollars on paid ad for a simple fix, for a simple optimization, and they're wasting money every month because they're not actively managing, or there's nobody actively managing it. Or they let Google give them the recommendations, right? Yeah, Google gives you a call, make these edits. What's Google want to do? They want to make more money. And so they say, open up the floodgates, trust us. Famous last words, and lots of money gets wasted. So having someone who can have eyeballs on your Google ads is critically important. Wanted to shift gears, as I mentioned before, to local service ads. This is relatively new and fairly new in the siding space. In fact, put in the chat if you're familiar with Google local service ads, or Google guaranteed ads as they also are called, and you can see what this looks like. This is an example of just doing a roofing search in Tulsa, but it's the Google guarantee ads that come up at the top. And siding category is relatively new. It's just opened up. And so these are new and are very, very hot right now because the competition is still fairly low. Not many contractors are jumping on that. And so this is a good opportunity to get some good leads at a good cost per lead. And you pay per lead. It's not like pay-per-click where you pay every time someone clicks, or your competitors clicking and causing you to pay money. This is a pay per lead, and they're exclusive. They come just to you. And so Google local service ads are open in your market in the Detroit area. Again, very new. And the nice thing is it's a qualification process. Because it's a Google guaranteed ads, you have to submit your insurance, you have to do a background check, things like that. And they have high purchase intent. The leads that you're getting, these are people who are ready to buy. So that we often find that Google local service ads have better quality of leads. And so definitely is an area you want to jump on to generate some good leads. I want to shift gears to a different kind of question that we also got with regards to lead generation, is how to improve the quality of the leads. Yeah, go ahead, Will.
Sorry, I just saw this as a good question from Sean, and I know this is going to vary by market and by service even, but what is the average cost per lead with Google Guaranteed?
Yeah, that's a good question. Google opened this up about 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, where they let you bid on those leads. It used to be very low, and it differed by market, but we saw siding leads as low as $30, $40. But now that is going up as you're able to bid. So if the competition is low, you should still be able to get $30, $40, $50 cost per lead. Once that competition starts increasing, that's why this is the time to jump on these, because it's a bid system. If you want to show up more, you're going to bid higher, and so that cost per lead will increase. But as of now, we're still seeing about $50 cost per leads in some markets. Yeah. So jumping on this, how to improve the quality of the leads, and the number one thing that we tell contractors is to know exactly how your marketing campaigns are doing, especially when it comes to paid, so that you can know what to adjust, what to stop doing, what to do more of. And so this is the number one metric that is important for contractors to know, is what is the return on investment per lead source. So whatever your lead, if it's Google ads, if it's Facebook ads, if it's Home Advisor, knowing exactly what your return on investment is will allow you to make good adjustments, to tweak, to get better quality leads. And so was the amount of money that you put in to that channel, to that source, higher or lower than what you got out of it? And so you need to know exacts here. It's really important to know exactly which leads came from these sources. It's not just numbers. It's, yep, we have these people, these sales came from these sources. Otherwise, this is very hard to track. And so it's important to have somebody on your team that is assigned to do this, and their responsibility is to connect the dots, because obviously this happens later. You know, there's a journey. You know, they're not buying and selling right there and then. And so going back to be able to connect the dots so that you can make great educational, decisions, I should say, on the different marketing channels, and then giving feedback back to whoever's running these. As a PPC provider, pay-per-click provider, we are desperate for our contractors to tell us exactly how our leads are going. What are you seeing with your leads? Where are those leads coming from? What are their pain points? Why aren't they buying? So that we can make the necessary adjustments to your campaign to give you better quality leads. And so, or you can make a decision to, hey, I'm stop, doing this kind of advertising, and then I'm going to try this one. But knowing exactly where your leads are coming from is important. One of the things that I want to touch on, which affects the number of leads and the quality of leads, is the phone. And this is a little bit off on a tangent, but it's kind of my rant for the day. And it's because we see this time and again with contractors is answer the phone. You would be so surprised the amount of calls that go to a company, and if they don't have a good system, they let the phone just go to voicemail, or it goes to the owner's cell phone and he's on a job and it goes to voicemail. And so often we're seeing that people aren't leaving voicemails. They're on to the next, they're going down the list. Okay, didn't get hold of them. Let's move on to the next. And you've lost that lead. You've paid $50, $100, $150 to get that lead, and it's not a lead. They've moved on. So answering the phone is critical. And then if they're using a web form, calling that lead back is super important too, as quick as possible. But the main goal about the phone is to have someone who's answering it, who is trained to convert. Their job is to convert that into a consultation, into an estimate. So giving them a script, training them how to do it, making sure that the person who's answering the phone can convert. Again, so surprising when we listen to calls, because we track our calls. It's almost like they're doing them a favor. What do you want? Type of attitude, and making it so hard for the homeowner to get a quote. And you listen to this saying, they want your business. Make it as easy and pain-free as possible. So please, answering the phone or having somebody who does answering the phone through a call answering service is critical. All right, I wanted to jump on to 2 or 3 additional questions that we got really quickly. One of these was how to budget for marketing. Great question. Your marketing budget should be based on your business goals. Where do you want to go? And a good rule of thumb is 5 to 10% of your revenue, of your goal. Where, if you're a $2 million company and you want to be a $3 million company, it's setting that 5 to 10%, and 5% is really the bare minimum in my mind about where, to set it on that goal, the $3 million revenue. And, those are all going to go through all different kinds of marketing costs, from websites, through advertising campaigns, through content, through events, through canvassing, whatever your marketing is, it's going to come out of that. But attributing 5 to 10%, it should never be, your marketing budget should never be something that you just, you calculate based on what's left over. Whatever else gets taken care of, now we've got this pool of money left, and now let's put it to marketing. This is an investment, something that will give a return on investment over time. And so treating it as such is really important. All right, moving on to another one of the questions that we got is how to establish your company identity and your company's brand. The best answer for us here is to ensure you're standing out from the crowd. There are thousands of contractors in your area who do just the same services you do. So there's so much noise as a homeowner they're facing. There's a plethora of choice, and it's really hard for them to know who to go to. And so it's your job to make sure that you stand out from the crowd and that you differentiate yourself, so you don't sound like everybody else. Otherwise, all you then get to compete on is price. If it's all the same on paper, it just becomes a price game. And so, we often see initially with contractors, we're BBB accredited. We've been in business for 47 years. We value service and quality, which again means what? And it's these blast statements that everybody says that doesn't stand out. And so asking yourself, what makes you unique? Why would a homeowner choose you and hire you versus a competitor, even if you charge more? And answering those questions and then using that to develop your message for your website, for your ads, for your sales team and your sales scripts is so important. And then also backing that up with testimonials and third-party reviews that reinforce that message is really important. And so at the end, we're one of the follow-ups as well is we're going to send you is a guide into how to find your unique value, how to differentiate yourself from the competition. So we're gonna give you that free guide. Will, do I have 2 more minutes to answer one more question? Okay, I know I've got my timer here. So I wanted to answer one more question because I know there was a lot of questions. And so one of the things that we got asked as well is how to make the most of social media, how to generate leads from social media. Again, the Accelerator Guide has a whole chapter on social media. So get it, read it, it's going to be gold. But it comes down to having a plan, making sure that somebody is responsible for that, and tracking it, making it measurable, knowing the metrics so that you can make decisions based on it. Social media is not something I recommend contractors invest in straight away, especially when there's other really important marketing things like building a website, building a brand message. But it is something that it can be done relatively inexpensive and can at least be done on a small scale basis within your company. Even if it's assigning somebody in your team a job of posting 2 to 3 times a week, or posting some jobs that you get. If you're taking before and after jobs, it's their responsibility to go and post those on Facebook. Start there and build from that. Posting job photos and video, even more so is gold. And so and do that. And then the other thing is recognize that, like Facebook, like Google, Facebook's in it for the ad revenue. And so you've probably seen it where you may have posted to your company page and you see the metrics. Oh, 2 people saw this post, 3 people saw this post, and you're thinking, why have I bothered to put all this time if that's all that is seeing? And so unfortunately, the honest truth is you need to pay to get your post in front of your audience. So even if it's $5, $10, pay certain posts to get the reach out there and reach your target audience. Be specific about who you want to see those posts, but pay to get those posts out there, get that following and driving traffic back to your website so that you can measure those and measure the leads that you get from it. So that's my recommendations. As I said, we have this giveaway as well, which is creating your unique value and how to differentiate yourself, that we will be sending out on our follow-up email. But this is my email address. So if I didn't get to your question, or if you have a follow-up question, please reach out to me. I'd love to help you. And again, like Jeff said, I won't try and sell you. I really just want to be a resource and a help to you. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Bruce. Real quick, Dylan had one last question I want to hit. Social media, is it more of like brand awareness and reach, or is it a lead generator? So maybe you could mention some of the lead ads we've been doing, and then also kind of the strategy behind what we do with awareness and reach.
Yeah, it should be a combination of both, for sure. You want to get your brand out there into your area, and so having good posts that highlight your brand's personality, the differentiators that make you unique are important. But coupling that with maybe geofencing ads, if there's a project you've just done, the nice thing with Google is you can go down to a mile radius and say, I want to share an ad that's just the mile and showcase some of your jobs, and again, linking back to your website to measure those leads. But lead ads and also that's a different format of ads where you can actually go straight onto Facebook and fill out your information. they're making that easier and easier, and we've seen great success with Facebook lead ads. But again, knowing who you're targeted to your target audiences is important, as well as what your goals are is important.
Appreciate that. Yeah, thank you, Bruce. Thank you so much. So listen, everyone, we have, that pretty much wraps it up. I've got one thing important to tell you, which is we have the opportunity to set up a 30-minute free strategy session with you. If you have more questions, if you want some more insights, Hillary's going to send out a link. She'll reach out to you individually, set up a 30-minute strategy call with our team, which is a powerful way to get an objective perspective. Sometimes as a business owner, you're too close to it. You have blind spots. And so to be able to speak with someone who knows the industry and can see your business from another viewpoint can be really valuable. She'll send that out. That's for free. That's just something we like doing. We like helping the good guys win. And if you're working with James Hardy, then you're with the good guys. James Hardy does stuff right. You know that. If you're a contractor, you know they do stuff right. So we love working with them. And so we'd love to talk with you if you feel like you'd like some more insight and help. I want to give a big thanks to Jeff Prager. Thank you so much for all of your valuable insight and time, Bruce, and Sean, and Hillary. Thank you so much for helping to put this together. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your afternoon. And look for an email here in the next day or two from Hillary. She'll send a quick follow-up with all of the resources, like the unique value guide, the accelerator booklet, and also a link to the strategy call if you'd like to set one of those up. So, all right, that wraps it up. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.